Well, Jim, a few CM Punk questions before we get moving on here. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Michael Pallas. I know there's no chance of this hell freezing over moment ever happening, but let's say we have our own Jerry Lawler to WWF moment, and Tony Khan gives up the AEW booking. Also, let's say CM Punk is the one who takes the book. 1, do you think he could do a good job as booker? And 2, what do you think his first order of business is?
Jesus. Whether he could do a good job as booker or wanted to do a good job as booker may be two different things, because the job of booker is stressful and thankless and highly, subject to burnout. And just because somebody wants to be a wrestler and do their own shit doesn't mean they want to come up with everybody's shit. But since we're what-ifing anyway, if he wanted to do it, he would be instantly better than Tony because he has some knowledge of wrestling at a high level and respect for how difficult it is to do it right. And it seems like at least a good inclination to want to make the shit good and or real and or believable and not juvenile and childish. So right off the bat, yes, he would do a better job than Tony Khan. Would he be Bill Watts or fucking Leo Garibaldi or either Eddie Graham or whatever? Who knows? It would be better than what they got. But then the point is, would CM Punk be more valuable as a main event wrestler or as the booker? And the answer, I think, at this point is still he'd be more valuable in the ring as a main event wrestler. So I wouldn't, bring him in and give him the book. I'd bring him in and say, look, who do you think ought to be booking this? Give me some input. I'm going to ask you and 3 or 4 other people that are not my EVPs, because obviously they've lied to me since the start. And I would give, if I was Tony Khan, I'd give Punk and everybody else on the roster a break, a lucky break, and I would stop booking, and I would give it to somebody experienced, and I would use my resources, the money and the contacts, as the promoter to get more people to see this shit. Because I wouldn't be wasting my time writing down mark shit from my basement when I was 14 years old, because it's pretty obvious this fan base has wanted to support this thing since the beginning, and it's basically give or take the same number of them that are still wanting to support this thing. They got a little pop when Punk came in, and they lost a little when he left. And I don't really know. I'm not trying to diminish the contributions of the guys that have really worked hard, like MJF or like fucking Danielson or like fucking Punk. Moxley's working real hard in his own way. He just goddamn can't get out of it. His own way, I mean. I don't want to diminish their work, but everything that they did and that they have done would have been approximately the same kind of rating, the same kind of buy rate, the same whatever, the same metric of success if anybody else had been booking instead of Tony. Because how could it have made less sense? How could it have been any worse if you used the same guys? The fans are coming to see the wrestlers, and they're coming to see these matches. The matches might have had better builds with better booking, but I can't see anything that Tony has done that either brought a bunch of people there that wouldn't have been there with anybody else booking, or truthfully, because the people, his core audience, wants so badly to see him succeed, the shit that he's done that would have run off vast amounts of fans in other eras has not done that either. They'll stick with him even if it's rotten because they want the thing to succeed, but he's not made any new fans because nothing makes any sense. Does that make sense?
I think it does, and it's important to note that CM Punk, I think we can reliably say, was one of the wrestlers that had a lot of input in every single thing he did in AEW. And
oh, yeah, that's why it always was good.
And that's why it was always good. It was always serious. The promos stuck out. The angles stuck out. Didn't always go anywhere. Like him and Kingston was kind of just a couple weeks, but you would have to think, again, we don't know how he could do on his own as a booker, but just based on that part alone, the fact that his vision, minus whatever Tony did to those segments, his vision has been pretty good on this show.
Yeah, but then also you get into the situation where if you've got a guy that always produces great interviews and great matches and his shit looks good and gets over and makes sense, whatever, that's him. If you try to say, well, then this guy should be the booker and he should write all this stuff, he's still got to have the rest of the fucking cast. And even William Shakespeare could write shit for an 8th grade drama class and the acting would still be meh because it's a bunch of 8th graders. So the problem becomes a booker in any time period, but especially in today's environment, needs to be the one that assembles the team to run the plays and carry the ball or whatever sports analogy you want to use as he sees fit. And if a guy's just suddenly handed the book when somebody else picked the talent, then he's got to immediately say, okay, who on this roster can do the shit that I'm going to ask them to do and do it properly? And if it's less than half, then he's hamstrung from the get-go. You can't just suddenly tell Jungle Boy, go out and be a fucking interesting personality and cut a hell of a promo about this fucking thing. Well, you can say that all day long, but it ain't going to fucking happen. So that's why the booker was not only always the one who called the shots, but the booker was the one who, in the most part, in the majority, assembled the talent roster. And that's why in modern era, when all this talent was under contract and you would get a new booker, but you wouldn't get a new talent roster, a lot of times, even though those guys had had success before in different places, they don't have success again. Because now you got a football coach with a team full of fucking bench warmers for what he wants to do. So there's always that trouble too.